Tell us a little bit about the construction of Nemesis and also that initial relationship with B&M.
When it came to the redevelopment of the Thunder Looper, it was very obvious we had to build some kind of high thrill coaster that was very different to anything else that had been built or was going to be built. And of course, it was going to go head to head with the big one at Blackpool. There was no way we could build a 200-foot monster that was going to loom up above the Staffordshire countryside. The planners made that abundantly clear. So we had to find a way of developing a unique, high-thrill ride which was intriguing, which would be very, very different to the big one. And I looked around, and we'd had a very good relationship with Arrow Developments, or Aerodynamics as they were later called, when we did the Vampire at Chessington. And while they were building the Vampire, they kept talking about this pipeline coaster that they were proposing, where basically these rather strange bullet-shaped cars were rolled between the tracks as if they were within a pipe, and therefore they could actually do barrel rolls as if they were going through the rifle barrel of a gun. And eventually they got in touch with me and said, "We've got a prototype. Do you want to come and have a look at it?" They sent me photographs of these strange bullet-shaped cars, which looked almost like missiles. Immediately I got excited about the idea and thought, right, how can we come up with some kind of intriguing theme that would go along with this strange sort of weapon-like missile? And I came up with the idea of a strange, secret, sinister facility that was developing some kind of nuclear weapon or whatever under the greatest of secrecy, and we'd put a barbed wire fence around the whole thing and keep out notices, and the whole idea was that it was some kind of sinister secret weapon that was being developed. So the project got the code name The Secret Weapon, and I did a layout of the ride based on information that Arrow had sent me. And that first layout, I numbered that drawing SW1, in other words, Secret Weapon 1. Well, I then went over to Utah to ride the ride and was dreadfully disappointed. It was a great rumbling, hideous thing that trundled around the track, was very energy inefficient, and the amount of lift energy that we could give the train would have meant that the actual length of track and the ride itself would have been very short. And I came back to Britain and I said to the team, "Sorry guys, it's back to square one." And I heard about a new prototype ride that Bolliger and Mabillard were developing in the States for the Six Flags Park in Chicago. And I knew Harold Hudson, who was head of engineering of Six Flags. And well, first I got in touch with Bolliger and Mabillard, and I said, "Well, what is it that you're doing out there? Because I've heard that the track is going together and it looks as if the actual track is on the outside of the loop. So is this some kind of suspended coaster?" And I can't remember whether it was Walter Bolliger or Claude Mabillard I spoke to, but he was very cagey and he said, "I'm sorry, I cannot talk to you about it. This is a private project with Six Flags." So I phoned up Harold Hudson and I said, "Harold, come on, you owe me a favour," because I think we'd helped him on some project. "What is this thing that you're building at your park in Chicago?" And he said, "Well, I'll have to clear this with my board because we're doing this secret with B&M, but I'll have a chat with them." And he got back to me a couple of days later and he said, "Right, it's an inverted coaster that we're developing with B&M, where the vehicles are beneath the track, but it can go through loops and barrel rolls. And I said, that's amazing. No one's done that before. You know, the poor old vampire at Chessington couldn't send that upside down. It would wobble all over the place. So I said, look, could you keep us in on the project? Because, you know, this could be to our mutual benefit. And if we develop anything with B&M in the future, we'll share it with you. So he said, all right, I'll clear it with B&M. So he did. And B&M then phoned up and said, all right, we'll let you in on it. And Nick Varney, who was the marketing director at Alton Towers by this time, who is, of course, now, you know, CEO of Merlin, and I went out to Chicago when they were test running it, and immediately we were blown away by it. It was an incredible ride. And but the problem was it had a lift height such that it would have gone way above treetop height at Alton Towers. And the only way to get a ride with that kind of lift energy was to dig a great big hole. I mean, everybody says to me, oh, isn't it great the way you sort of manoeuvred the ride around that hole? I said, no, it didn't work that way. We built that hole. That was a flat level site. Every single cubic metre of rock, thousands of tonnes of rock were excavated, sculpting a hole that fitted the ride. So I worked on a layout for the ride, and because this was the second layout, the first being the bullet coaster, the pipeline coaster, I labelled that drawing SW2. We went through various iterations and various different numbers, and I worked with B&M. They sent me, and there are not very many people in our industry that B&M are prepared to actually divulge technical information. If you've got enough money and you can afford a B&M ride, you say to them, look, design us the ride, and they do. But with me, I've always worked with them. I've always gone out there and helped shape the ride and work on the profile and the layout. And gradually it all came together. And the rest is history. The rest is well, Nemesis came into being.
Do you remember much about the day that you and Claude took the sandbags off the seats of Nemesis and got on it for the first time? I think you were the first two human beings.
Yeah, we were the first two. Whereas nowadays there's a huge amount of health and safety legislation that means that it's got to run so many times and it's got to be clocked and sandbags and all this sort of thing. We got the thing round the track a couple of times, and then Claude and I were stood on the station, and Claude said, fancy a ride? I said, you bet. So we took a couple of sandbags out and we rode it, and it was absolutely extraordinary. And now I look back and I think of the millions of people that have followed us. In every year that ride rides a couple of million people. So virtually the entire population of Britain in numbers has ridden that ride, and Claude and I were the first. And that was very, very special. And then on opening day, Claude didn't come over on opening day of the ride, but Walter Bolliger did. And Walter and I just stood back. People didn't recognise us. People didn't know who we were. I'd done a few television sort of promotional things, but we stood back and we just watched people come off that ride, having queued for a long time, because the ride, the word got around that this was an amazing thing. The combination of the ride and the way it was set with the rock and the landscaping and the theming of the Nemesis creature, and we stood back and we were just so thrilled that we knew we had a gigantic success on our hands, and 20 odd years later, it's still the most popular ride at Alton Towers. It shouldn't be. The latest ride should always be the most popular ride, but I think we really did get it right. And towards the end of the day, I said, Walt, had a very serious expression on my face, and I said, Walter, you realise we've got a really serious problem here? And he looked at me in horror. I said, how the hell do we top this? And we both had a laugh, and we thought we better put our thinking caps on. So we did.